I've been using this stove, or this design of this stove, for many years now. It's in every one of my backpacking videos, and it has never let me down. And it's super strong and it lasts for years. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make one of those, a ultralight soda can stove. Let's get started. So if you've ever thought about lightening your pack by ditching your canister stove, and you've considered maybe going cold soaking, I would suggest try going alcohol. It is like stupid light. If you think about it, if you think about how much an empty soda can weighs, this weighs less than that because you're not using the top and you're not using the entire sidewall. So there's less material here than a full empty soda can. So it is really, really, really light. The alternative is the canister stoves. They cook your food fast, but they're heavy, bulky. You can't always tell how much fuel you have left, whether you have enough to cook one more meal. And so then you typically end up carrying 2 canister stoves in case one runs out, and that's even more heavy and even more bulky. So before you go cold soaking, try this. Alright, let's get started. All you need is a soda can, obviously, a tape measure, a razor knife, a pair of scissors, a marker, and a push pin. Now I have made several of these over the years, and they all still work, although they do get dinged up a little bit over time. Some of the older ones look pretty bad, but regardless of how they look, they all still work. So they do last a long time. The first one I ever made, I actually sanded off the label just so that it would look like, just a silver stove, but that's completely optional and it doesn't really have any effect on the functioning of the stove. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is remove the top. And all you have to do is take your knife and just go along the little groove in the top. Not too hard. You don't really have to cut through. All you're trying to do is wear a groove so that it gets weaker. And it takes a while. This is the longest part of the whole process because it's the thickest metal. But eventually, if you just keep going round and round, eventually it will weaken, and then you will be able to push it through. As you can see, my knife just sort of punched through there a little bit because it has become so weak and thin. And then you just kind of have to work it. The thing you have to worry about is not squeezing it too much, because you don't want to dent the can, because if you dent the can, then the show's over and you have to start over with a new can. Alright, and once you get it punched through, step 1 is complete. Now you may be thinking, well, why can't I just use a can opener? Wouldn't that be a lot easier? And you really cannot do it because it cuts away too much of the upper ring there. It cuts away too much of the metal, and you need that to hold the inner wall. So you could do it, but it won't work. Alright, step 1 is done. Now what you have to do is cut out the middle. And so you're going to make a mark 1 1/4 inches from the top and 1 inch from the bottom. Again, 1 inch from the bottom, 1¼ inches from the top. And then find something to sort of prop up your marker so that you can line it up with the marks that you just made. I'm just using an old Jiffy muffin box here, but just anything that would enable you to line up your marker so that you can draw the line all the way around the can. Nice and smooth. Yep. And then you want to do that for both marks, top and bottom. That's kind of why you need something that's adjustable. You can just fold the cardboard and adjust the height of your marker so that it meets the mark. Alright, now that you've got it all marked out, it's time to start cutting it. This again is another step that requires some patience. You have to be somewhat gentle so that you don't dent the can. And really you're not really trying to cut it here, you're just trying to score it and wear a groove that will eventually weaken and you'll be able to punch through it. And so this again, not hard to do, but it just takes some patience and it takes some time. So you're just going to go around and round and make a groove in that line. And eventually it will be weak enough that you can punch it through. So every once in a while you want to check it, see if it's getting weaker. And then what I do is I like to put one finger on the inside and then push from the outside to see if I can get it started. Yep, once you get it started, the rest of it should tear pretty easily. And it will tear right along that line that you created. Alright. Now it doesn't have to be smooth or anything. You don't have to sand it. This is going to go on the inside of the stove. So you don't have to put any effort into making it perfect. And of course now you have to do the other line. And this one's a little harder because there's not as much to grab onto. But pretty much the same principle applies. You're not trying to cut it. You're just trying to score a groove. Now with this one, at some point you can cheat. You don't have to wear it all the way through. You can cheat and use the scissors and cut vertically down and then tear it from there. Alright, once you have the inside wall cut out and you have your top and your bottom, the goal here is you want to line it up with the top. You may notice that the inner wall is too tall. So the inside wall, you're going to have to cut it down to size. We only want it to be 1.5 inches tall. So again, you want to measure, make your marks, draw a line, and then you can just use scissors to cut the inner wall so that it's only 1.5 inches tall. Trying to get it as straight as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect, but the straighter it is, the better. Right. And the rest of it you can throw away. We will not be using it. You also may notice that the inner wall is too long and it has a lot of overlap. So it's not really that much of a problem. You can trim that down if you want a little bit. You do want some overlap, not a lot. Alright, so I'm marking where it overlaps on both sides, and then somewhere in the middle, just going to make a mark there where I can cut a slot for the two halves to slot together. And again, this is another part that doesn't have to be perfect. It has to line up, but it doesn't have to be, it doesn't matter how long you cut the slot. You may have to cut a short one at first and see if that works, and then cut a longer one. The idea is that the walls should wrap around and fit together and fit in the slot for the top of the can. You may notice that if you size the inner wall to fit the top of the can, that then it becomes too wide to fit in the bottom, because the bottom ring is smaller than the top ring. But not to worry, we will deal with this in the next step. Alright, so all you need to do is cut a few little triangle shaped notches. I like to cut one on either side of the overlap. And then from there, one directly on the opposite side. That gives you 3, and then I will make 2 more in between those other 2. Right? So that will give us 5 notches. Right? Evenly spaced. Pretty much. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. Right, so now we have all of our notches cut, and what that will do is enable the bottom of the wall flex inward and fit into the bottom groove. Alright, so you want the top to come down and fit just over the bottom, but not hang too low. Right? So the bottom is going to fit inside the top. And the reason why we have to make the feather cuts is to help the bottom sort of turn the corner there when it gets near the top. So you just want to make a bunch of little cuts, roughly about 1/8 of an inch. You don't really have to measure it. It's not that precise. You don't have to be perfect. And making little cuts about 1/8 of an inch deep and maybe 1/8 of an inch apart. And just go all the way around. And then once you have those cuts made, just go around and sort of flex them in a little bit. And that will help you fit the bottom inside the top when you're putting it all together. One thing you can do to help stretch out the top is you can put it over a can and push down on it, and that will help stretch it out a little bit. But again, this is Completely optional. It may or may not even help. So we have our bottom with our feather, we have our top, our middle wall with our notches, and we have our top. So basically, the wall goes in the top. And then the bottom goes right on, like that. Nice and even, nice and careful. And then if you try to do this slowly and squeeze everything together, it will never go. I've never been able to just sort of gently squeeze this thing together. Right? It will just never want to go. Alright, so what you have to do is build it upside down, put all the pieces together, and then line up the bottom to be as even as you can. Make sure everything is fitting inside, and then you have to just give it a little bit of a punch, a little bit of a hit with the bottom of your fist, or maybe you could use a rubber mallet or something, right? And it will keep going until it doesn't want to go anymore, right? Make sure everything's coming together nicely. And you can see where it's a little uneven here, a little uneven there. Just keep giving it some gentle nudges until it gets all the way on. There you go. And you can see where the bottom sort of flexed in. Alright, just make sure everything is secure. And that's it. You have a nice strong stove. All you have to do now is cut the holes. As you can see on this one, I lined up the label between the top and the bottom so there's a continuous stripe. I mean, that's really, it doesn't matter. On this one I didn't do it. It doesn't matter. And you could even sand off the label. That's totally up to you. Now you want to cut the holes for the flames to come out, and I just generally start with a marker, put a dot everywhere you want to make a hole, and I usually just go north, south, east, west. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then once you have 4 holes, then just go in between, halfway in between each one. Halfway, halfway, halfway. And that gives you 8 holes. I usually go for 16. So once you have 8, then just go in between each of those. And you have all 16 holes marked out. And then grab your push pin and just sort of push gently and kind of twist it a little bit to try and dig until it punches through. Again, you don't want to push too hard because you don't want to dent the can. And you also don't want to punch a hole in the inner wall. Right, you'll feel it when it punches through. And just check the inner wall to make sure you didn't make a punch all the way through. So the hole is supposed to be between the inner and outer walls. Alright, once you got all the holes cut, your stove is done. Now it's time to test it. As you can see, I made some dents in the inner wall there when I was making the holes. Dents are fine, but you don't want to just punch all the way through. Just make sure it didn't go all the way through. Alright, now it's time to test it. Now I would recommend testing this outside, not in your kitchen like I'm doing here. But I am using a terracotta garlic roaster so that I can smother the flame. And it's also, if any of the alcohol leaks out, it will be in this dish here. And let me turn the lights off here so you can see the flame. Yep. And it usually takes about a minute for the fuel to heat up and start going through the jets. There you go. This is actually probably the fastest heating stove I've ever made, because I think because this time I made 5 notches instead of 3. In previous stoves I only made 3 notches, but this time it took off much quicker because of the 5 notches. And let me just put it out now. Again, this is a terracotta garlic roaster, and this is really the only way to put an alcohol stove out, is to smother it. You just have to be careful. Don't take the lid off too soon, or you'll have a backdraft situation. Alright, so this picnic table is not exactly level, but I tried to pick the spot on the table that seems like it's the most level. And this is nothing more than the lid to a jar of spaghetti sauce, and inside I cut out a little piece of Reflectix, hopefully to try and create some insulation. Who knows if that really works, if that's even necessary, but that's what I did. And this is mostly for when you're using the stove directly in the snow. So you would put this down in the snow and put your stove on top of that. And it's also good for picnic tables, because you don't want to be that guy that leaves a burn mark on a picnic table, right? Don't be that person. So that's why I have this lid as a base. And as you can probably tell, I tried to scratch up the surface a little bit to create a little bit of grip so that the stove doesn't slide off. It doesn't really work that well, so I'm still looking for some kind of more ideal solution to this problem. Alright, so the test I'm going to do is I'm going to try to boil 500 milliliters of water, and that's just because this cup uses milliliters. 500 milliliters is slightly more than 2 cups of water, but it's still a pretty fair test. Alright, now I'm going to put in about 1 ounce of fuel, and then I will time it to see how long it burns and how long it takes us to get to a boil. It's pretty close, I guess. Alright, I can feel it burning, but you can't really see it because in the daytime it's hard to see. You might be able to see the heat ripples. And usually it takes about 60 seconds for the fuel to be hot enough to come through the jets here, so I usually wait about a minute before I put the cup on top. And it is a little breezy today, so I'm going to put this wind blocker here. Hopefully that will help a little bit. Alright, so I keep my alcohol fuel in hand sanitizer bottles because they're easy to carry. It's easy to stick this in your pocket and warm it up on cold mornings. And it's easy to measure out just how much fuel you need. And my rule of thumb for this stove is half an ounce of alcohol fuel to 1 cup of water. So if you're cooking a dinner, which is usually 2 cups of water, you need half a bottle or 1 ounce. And I have replaced the top with a flip-up nozzle because it's a little bit more secure than the snap tops that come with hand sanitizer bottles. You don't want that thing flipping open at the wrong moment and leaking all your fuel out. So these are a little bit more secure. I will usually carry one of these fuel bottles for every night of camp. So if I'm going out for 3 days, 2 nights, I will carry 2 of these. So 1 bottle gets me a dinner, which is 2 cups of water, plus oatmeal and coffee for the next morning. So 1 bottle gets me through 1 night of camp. For lunches, you know, I don't like to cook when I'm on trails. So for lunches, it's usually tuna or something that's you know, I'll eat a cold lunch and then I'll have a hot dinner, and you know, I gotta have my coffee in the morning. So half an ounce of fuel to 1 cup of water, that really is just a rule of thumb. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes, depending on the weather, if it's winter, if it's cold out, or even if it's a rainy day and there's a lot of humidity, sometimes you lose efficiency, and what you'll get is you'll get to a good simmer, but maybe not a rolling boil. I mean, ideally, you'd love to get to a rolling boil every single time, but even if it gets to, you know, a good simmer, that's usually good enough for whatever you're doing, whether it's, you know, breakfast, you know, oatmeal and coffee, or whether it's a dehydrated backpacker meal. You know, a simmer is usually good enough. So, and then there's times when I kind of figure that it's going to require a little bit more fuel, so I'll put a little extra in, just to make sure if I really do want to get that solid, you know, good rolling boil. Why is there always a plane when you're shooting a video? I don't know if you can see that or not. We're almost coming up on 10 minutes. And we're still burning, but I don't see any steam coming out just yet. Also, I would recommend getting yourself a nice big ferrocerium rod. This one's from Ultralight. I added the orange string myself because I like to have orange on all of my gadgets that I don't want to lose in the woods. This just makes it easier to spot when it's on the ground. And I never carry a lighter because I don't want to get caught in a situation where my lighter has run out of fuel. And this thing, as you can see, probably will never run out. 11 minutes. Yeah, alcohol stoves are not known for being fast. But they're super light, and this one is really, really reliable. Oh, I think we have a boil. And we are at 12.5 minutes. And we have, hot. And we have a rolling boil, 12.5 minutes. Yes, not fast, but for only 1 ounce of alcohol fuel, 500 milliliters, that's not too bad. And there you have it. We have now tested the stove and it works. We can go camping now. Let me know in the comments if you found this video helpful, and if you decide to actually try to make one, let me know how it turned out. I'd be curious to know if you liked it or not. Alright, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. And I'm going to show you how to make a soda can stove. I'm going to finish this f***ing video if it kills me. Alright, let's get started. Who am I talking to?